DeVito. Zacchaeus, Danny DeVito always comes into my mind. Zacchaeus was a small man, the Bible says. You know, the old Sunday school song. Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. I don't even know it. I'm not even going to try it. Yeah, and he climbed up a sycamore tree. But see, both of them were little, but I look at Danny DeVito, and he can play a good mobster. He's played a couple of those roles. And I think of Zacchaeus being a chief tax collector. He was kind of like a Hebrew mobster. So I'm sorry, I just think of Danny DeVito whenever I think of Zacchaeus. But beyond that is this. Zacchaeus craved Jesus. He sought after him. And he craved after him. And he did so sincerely and with such a genuine heart. We read in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Now, if you have your Bibles, you can open up to Luke chapter 19. I do believe these verses are in the back of your notes. So here we go. He, being Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through. And there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was. But on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small of stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down. I must stay at your house today. So Zacchaeus hurried down and came and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled. He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save that what was lost. And so here we have Zacchaeus climbing up a sycamore tree. And I always like to put everything in context so we know exactly what we're looking at. First, as we look at Jericho, and Jericho was a very rich city. It was the destination city. It was filled with a lot of rich people, and it was people wanted to live there. It was an extremely wealthy city. In fact, King Herod actually had his winter palace in Jericho. So my mom and dad, they live up in Muskegon, and they used to go down to Texas, and they were winter Texans. King Herod was like the winter Jerichoian. So he wintered his palace. His winter palace was in Jericho. It was known back then, and it's still known today, the city of palm trees. And it is the oldest city known to man. In fact, a lot of historians, a lot of people will say this city is the first city that actually became a city. That people inhabited and created a city. This is the very first city in all of human history. And if we read our Old Testament, we know that Jericho was the city that Joshua came when they were going into the Promised Land, and this was the first city that he conquered. He marched around it one time each day for 6 days, and on the seventh day, he marched around it 7 times, and he shouted out really loud, and the walls came down. And they went and they conquered the city of Jericho. Notice that Jesus was only passing through. He wasn't staying. He was only passing through. At this point in Jesus' ministry, he has a laser focus on Jerusalem. He has a laser focus for his mission to go to the cross. This is right before the triumphal entry. He is laser focused on Jerusalem and on the cross. And he decides to stay at Zacchaeus' house. Of all people, it's Zacchaeus' house. So Zacchaeus, he climbs a sycamore tree. And, you look at trees around here, and I'm like, okay, one, he was short, and two, how did he climb a tree? Well, sycamore trees, they are a sign of wealth. They are lined the city streets, and it's a sign of wealth, so it's another sign that Jericho was a wealthy city. But they had very huge trunks, and the branches were really low, so Zacchaeus could actually climb it really easily, being a small man. And they gave great shade, and that's why they lined the streets, so the streets would be all shaded. So Zacchaeus, he goes and he runs up the sycamore tree, and I think of, Danny DeVito in a three-piece suit up in a sycamore tree. I can't get that picture out of my mind. But Zacchaeus was also a chief tax collector. And we read here that he was rich. But you know what? We really don't know how rich he was. See, what a chief tax collector was this. The Roman government had these tax collectors, or these chief tax collectors, over the different regions of the area. And those chief tax collectors, they oversaw the tax collectors. We read our Bibles in Matthew. One of Jesus' disciples was a tax collector. He probably knew Zacchaeus, because Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector overseeing a bunch of other tax collectors. So the Roman government would say, here's the tax. The chief tax collectors would say, okay, tax collectors, raise this much. And so they pocketed anything and above what the tax collectors would get for the taxes. Then the tax collectors would take the amount that the chief tax collector said, and they would raise that, and then they would pocket anything that they didn't have to give to the chief tax collectors. And because they oversaw a whole bunch of other tax collectors, more than likely, Zacchaeus oversaw a region that included both Jericho and Jerusalem. So he was he oversaw the tax collectors in that region. These people were the most hated people in all of Israel. We read, we know that tax collectors, they weren't the most popular. These guys were, you had the scum, that's the tax collectors. These are the scum of the scum, the chief tax collectors. These were really hated people. In fact, they had no friends. Chief tax collectors, they sold everything for money. They sold their friends. They didn't have any friends. And their families disowned them. They even sold their families in order to make money. So they had no family, no friends, but they were extremely wealthy. And you see, he was chief tax collectors, they're not allowed to go in the synagogue and worship God because of their job, because they're that hated. And so he was extremely wealthy. In fact, you had the king's palace in Jericho, probably the second best, biggest and best house in all of Jericho was Zacchaeus' house, outside the king's palace. He was probably the top 5% wealthiest people in both Jerusalem and Jericho. That's how wealthy he was. He was rolling in it. He was. It was like he had like the best house, like in California. The most expensive place to live in the region, and and he had the biggest house in the most expensive place to live in. He was extremely wealthy. And when we read our Bibles, we hear that he's rich, but we don't really know how rich he was. That's how rich he was. But Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus. He was craving after Jesus. He wanted to see him. There was buzz around Jesus. He wanted to see what was going on. And he earnestly and sincerely and authentically sought Jesus. And we can take lessons from Zacchaeus. We can take some lessons and we can apply it to our lives. And we can look at Zacchaeus, and if you're taking notes, this is the first point. Zacchaeus,